Alright guys, welcome back. We finally get into the meat of the set. This is probably a huge episode, don't know yet because I'm recording it, but we're talking about every single multicolored card in the set now. Ready? Go. Advent of the Worm. Put a 5/5 green Worm creature token with trample onto the battlefield at instant speed. I hope I don't need to tell you that this is amazing. 4 mana for a 5/5 is good. 4 mana for a 5/5 with flash is better. 4 mana for a 5/5 with flash and trample is spectacular. This card is amazing. I want to play it all day. I want to play it twice. I want to play it 3 times. Moving on, we're going to look at Armored Wolferida. This guy costs a little bit. He's a 4/6. He's a big dude, though. He's going to help you if you are running, if you're splashing Simic or if you're splashing white so you can get to some big late drops. This guy's obviously going to evolve your creatures. He's 6 in the ass, so he's a very good defender. You can give him Vigilance with the one guy out of just the white side. So I think that he has a lot of stuff that he can do. Just a lot of cool, fun stuff that he can be used for. On his own, not super threatening, not super great, but overall I think a pretty good card. Ascended Law Mage. Flying and Hexproof. This guy's a 3/2 with Hexproof. Pretty damn good. Now, there aren't a whole lot of removal spells like I've been saying. A lot of stuff is going to affect all of our creatures, and I would like to point out that if you're facing red, the art on this thing is sick and amazing though. But if you're facing the red guy, they have that first strike trick that they can drop, a lot of their stuff is going to be manipulating their own creatures. So the Hexproof's not super useful in this specific format, just because the lack of removal and stuff, but there's a strong lack of flying, okay? So here's the thing. This is a creature that they almost have to use their removal on because they don't have a lot of flying creatures. So I do really like this guy. Gonna come down 4 mana, 3/2, gonna get in there, uncommon slot, pretty sweet card. I do like this quite a bit. We've got Beetleform Mage. Beetleform Mage gets +2/+2 and gains flying until the end of turn. Activates his ability only once per turn. He's a 3-drop. He becomes a 4-drop flyer for 2 mana. I like that. I actually do like this guy. 4/4, I mean, he's going to tie up our mana on turn 4 a little bit unless we have a 2-drop that's useful, something like that. But I do like this guy. I think this guy is pretty silly. Just because of the fact that he's instant speed. And the fact that he gets flying. I just think that that's really useful. 4 damage coming in on their face is going to be pretty great. One of my favorite cards from the old set was that Oculus, Frilled Oculus, because he just pumped. He pumped and pumped, and I was just like, surprise, pump, slap in. People don't see that coming from Frilled Oculus. I don't know if they'll be a little bit more ready for Beetleform Mage, but it's definitely a card that I'm interested in. I want to see it get some play for sure. Blast of Genius. There's our guy right there. There he is. Look at him. He is looking good. He's brainstorming. Choose target creature or player. Draw 3 cards, then discard a card. Blast of Genius deals damage equal to the discarded card's converted mana cost to that creature or player. This is great, but it costs so much. It costs so much. I'd rather just be discarding this and slapping him in the face for 6. 6 is a lot, but we do get to draw cards, we get to do damage. You're the Izzet guy, so you're kind of doing crazy stuff to begin with. I think this fits really well in an Izzet deck. I don't know if it really has any usefulness in other decks or in splashing outside of other decks, but it is it can be a kill spell, and it is an uncommon slot, so I think it's kind of useful. It just depends on what your specific build is and where you top out at. I mean, you don't want to draw a bunch of 1-drops, 2-drops, and then be like, oh, I just blasted my genius all over the place for no reason. Blaze Commando. Whenever an instant or sorcery spell you control deals damage, put 2 1/1 red and white soldier creature tokens with haste onto the battlefield. This guy's pretty good. He's going to hit the thing, the table, whatever you're playing on. It could be a thing. It could be the floor. It could be a pizza. I don't know why you're ruining your cards, but I don't know what you're doing. I don't know how many sorcery spells you're running either. This is really, once again, a personal choice type of creature, except for the fact that he's a 5-drop, 5/3, which makes him a little bit better than some of the other ones. Also, don't forget that you have Battalion. Battalion's a thing in these colors. It's kind of what these colors do. So this guy is pretty exciting. I actually think that he's going to be pretty good in several decks, to be honest with you. Just because you can get that instant damage through and get, a couple of 1/1 red and white creature tokens out there as well. Blood Baron of Vizkoba. Lifelink, protection from white and from black. As long as you have 30 or more life and an opponent has 10 or less life, Blood Viscopa gets +6/+6 and is flying. This guy's a little late. The fact that he has protection from black and from white, though, is what makes him insane in my eyes. Because he is pretty much just going to seal the deal for you depending on what you're playing against. I think you side him out against like hyper aggro, but the protection from black is really good. A 4/4 protection from black against Rakdos is going to be really good for you. So it really just depends on what you're facing. But I think if you open this guy, you are going to keep him in your deck 100% of the time. He definitely slips in there in your original build. I just don't know if he particularly slides out depending on what you're up against. It's kind of a personal preference thing. I think that he's still pretty good against the hyper aggro. It really depends on how quick your opponent was in game 1. Boros Battle Shaper. At the beginning of each combat, up to 1 target creature attacks or blocks this combat if able, and up to 1 target creature can't attack or block this combat. So you just get to kind of make choices. It's a little bit like Odric. It's like an underpowered Odric. He costs a little bit more, doesn't have first strike. He's big though, he's a 5/5. And you're really able to just dominate the field, make choices for your opponent, which is pretty nice. You can force their hand a little bit, make them into really awkward, really bad blocks, which is kind of what Boros is all about. Boros is about controlling the table, really having that forcive presence on the field, and just getting in and making your opponent do whatever you want them to. Bred for the Hunt. Whenever a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. I really like this, to be honest with you. It's an enchantment. It's going to sit around for a while. It's really strong in Simic. You're just going to be gripping. It's uncommon. I don't see any reason not to play this if you're a Simic guy, just because it's uncommon, so hopefully you're going to see it a lot, and you're just going to keep drawing cards when you thwack your opponent. I don't really see a downside to that guy, to be honest with you. Bronzebeak Melwa, those things are cool looking. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, it gets +3/+3 until end of turn. I mean, it's okay with Populate. I understand what they're going for. It's a 4-drop 2/2, becomes a 5/5. I mean, you can get stupid with it, yeah. I mean, definitely, you can get a little silly with it. You've got guys with Flash, so you can just be like, flash in, boom, this dude's huge. I don't particularly like him, but I think he'll be ran in a couple of decks. He's just a 4-drop 2/2, though. I mean, that's just so hard to swallow. It's so hard to stomach right out the gate. Carnage Gladiator. Whenever a creature blocks, that creature's controller loses 1 life. 3, regenerate Carnage Gladiator. Pretty good. He's very hyper-aggressive. He's 4/2. He regenerates no matter what. They're going to lose life if they don't want to get smashed by him. Plus, he comes back. This guy's obviously really great, and he's an uncommon. I see this guy being played in almost every Rakdos deck that comes across him. Council of the Absolute. As Council of the Absolute enters the battlefield, name a card of blah, blah, blah. This is for mirror matches only, to be honest with you. Don't really see too much use in the second part of that ability in anything. We have a better version of this card, you know, exiles everything with the same name that's out on the field from previous sets. This is really for mirror matches. I think this is mostly just for standard mirror matches. It does things, it's got tricks, you get in cheaper, but that is not really useful depending on who you're playing against. Oh man, Deadbridge Chant. When Deadbridge Chant enters the battlefield, put the top 10 cards of your library into your graveyard. At the beginning of your upkeep, choose a card at random in your graveyard. If it's a creature card, put it onto the battlefield, otherwise put it in your hand. This is pretty good. It's 5-drop, 10 cards in a 40-card format is a lot to me. That is a lot to me. It makes me a little bit worried. It makes me a little bit worried that you could deck yourself, but it's only a 5-drop, and you just keep getting cards back in your hand. It just gives you recurrence. Definitely a playable card. Not super bomb-like, though. I mean, it doesn't like immediately go off and just get crazy. If you are in a weak board state to begin with, then you're going to have trouble when you just drop this card. But if you're racing your opponent and you're both in similar board states, or you're just a little bit of a weaker position, then this card's going to push you over the top. So it's definitely something to consider, especially given what colors you're in, because then you'll have those scavenge cards in there too that you flipped over. It's definitely a very good card in those colors for sure. Debt to the Deathless. Each opponent loses 2 times X life. You gain life equal to the life lost this way. I am going to just like bring 9 of these in my shoe for Two-Headed Giant, because this is going to just cock slap people in Two-Headed Giant. It's going to be insane. It's even good in, you know, heads up, 7-up, just one-on-one. Just let's go. Let's go to town. Drink some blood and stuff or something. I don't know. It's good. It does double, which is what makes it good. Because basically, you could think about it this way. You could think about it this way. It's really just 2 mana in X. When you think about it, if you want to think about it that way. You don't have to think about it that way. That way is kind of a stupid way to think about it, really. But it really is because it's 2 times X. You know what I mean? It's just a very complicated card. Really what they're ensuring there is that you have the mana levels right, I think. But the 2 times 10 is just insane. And each opponent, I mean, it's going to be nuts in 2-headed. So that's a really good card. I like that one quite a bit. Deputy of Acquittals, flash into the battlefield, and you are going to return another target creature you control to its owner's hand. That's pretty good. I mean, he's basically a rescue, Perilous rescue, super sad rescue, Griffin picking up a dude rescue from previous sets. It's going to drop a 2/2 down as well, though, which makes it a little bit better than it was back then. Dragon Shift, I don't want to have to think about this card existing. Like, do I have to worry about this every turn? Yeah, because after 3, they can make a big old fat 4/4 blue and red Drugan. He loses all his abilities, but he gains flying, so he's going to flap at your face and kill you. I mean, they wanted to make sure that it wasn't like lifeline, crazy shit like that. That's why it loses abilities. Really good, 4/4s. It overloads for 1 billion. Like, it overloads for 1 billion mana, 7 mana. Everybody comes out with 7 mana, you win, though, with Dragon Shift. Obviously, a good card. It's going to be in a lot of decks. I don't want to have to sit here and think about it, though. It makes me really sad. Drown in Filth. Just, like, put them down in the filth. Choose target creature, put the top 4 cards of your library into your graveyard. Then, that creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn for each land card in your graveyard. It's sorcery speed removal, pretty much, but you have to have a lot of land in your graveyard. Why do you have so much land in your graveyard, I ask you? And you say, I don't know, it just happened that way. I only have 3 lands out on the field, though, and you're, like, sad, and I'm sad for you, and we're all just sad. I don't think this is a great card. I don't know why you would have lands enough to kill something in here, and it's not instant speed, so you can't get too tricky with it. You'd have to use it second main if you were going to be tricky at all. TARDIS. Oh, man, we got freaking Doctor What in the house? Prevent all damage that would be dealt to creature tokens you control for 1 billion mana. Costs a lot. It's a big dude, but the creature tokens, their big problem is like bounce. Creature tokens' big problem is really you want them to be indestructible. So I don't know. I mean, the no damage thing is pretty silly. That's pretty funny. Just like a fog effect for just your dudes. So you can get a little bit tricky with it, but I just don't think it's great. I also know it's Doctor Who. Please don't flame the comments. Oh, wow. Rakdos Blood Witch. She's first strike in Hastings. She's pretty quick. It's nice to have a Blood Witch back among us. She unleashes to a 4/4, and each other creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has haste. This is a better version of the other card because it's a 4-drop, and everything has haste from that point on. So if you save up just a little bit, just 1 or 2 cards in your hyper-aggressive deck till after you drop her, and then you just do one huge turn where it's just like pow, 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 and you just come all over the table. All your creatures are sideways, and they're just first striking and all sorts of crazy stuff. Also, what would be really nice with this is if you had B-Talion. That'd be pretty great. If I was you, I'd really be excited about that combo. Flux Charger, flying. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you may switch Flux Charger's power and toughness until end of turn. Wow, that's silly. That's silly, man. I mean, I like that because he's flying. He's a 4. They can't really kill it. But then what's going to make you sad is you're going to be like, I switch his power and toughness. I'm going to hit you for 5. And they're like, instant speed, kill it. And you're like, oh, there's not really a whole mess of ways to kill something with 1 in the ass, though, at instant speed. There are ways, though. So don't just be super psyched that this guy hits the table. Be like, oh, man, I'm going to do damage to him this way, then I'm going to flip that, do damage to him this way. Don't count on it, because there are ways to get rid of this guy, obviously. Gaze of Granite, not to mention the dude that flashes in, green dude that flashes in, can just block this and kill it once you flip it, so that would make you sad. Gaze of Granite, destroy each non-land permanent with converted mana cost X or less. Pernicious Deed. It's Pernicious Deed. I mean, it's good to see Pernicious Deed again. I like Pernicious Deed. It's obviously a little bit different because Deed was an enchantment. You got to untap the mana you used to cast it, use it on your next turn. You can cast it for 0, just obliterate all the tokes that are out there. It's good, which is really why that other card, the chick from earlier, Dr. Wood, is a little bit weaker because this just says destroy, not deal damage. So it's just 3 mana, destroy all tokens. But it's a good card. It's a fun card. Does all sorts of crazy things. Love Pernicious Deed. Pretty much love that card. Gleam of Battle. Whenever a creature you control attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Whoa, that costs a lot though. That costs a lot though, but it's as they attack. So this could be a kill spell. This could be a kill spell for you. In limited format, I think it's playable. I just don't think it is top of the list for playability. Goblin Test Pilot. This guy's crashing everywhere. He's a 3-drop 0/2 with flying for some reason, I guess because he can block. I mean, in flavor-wise, it makes sense because he's a test pilot. But this guy's gonna deal 2 damage to target creature or player chosen at random. You got no control over it. You're assigning numbers, you're rolling die. I don't like doing that kind of stuff, so I don't like playing this guy. But he'll kill stuff for you. Interesting. Cruel War Chant. Each attacking creature you control gets +1/+0 and can't be blocked, except by 2 or more creatures for 4. Oh, wow. Thanks a lot, Wizards. I really, the one thing that I hated about Madcap Skills was that it didn't make me want to kill myself. So it's nice that they're trying again. They're like, wait, you didn't want to kill yourself after Madcap Skills? Not until Standard. Zombies. How about this? How about this? We'll throw that down there. I mean, can you deal with it? Yes. Do you want to deal with it? Not at all. I mean, it's going to just be terrible because you're not ready for it. When you're setting up your fortifications, your defenses, it's on your turn. You're going to pass to their turn. First main, they're going to be like this thing. You're going to be like, God, now I got to do all this new thinking. You got to come up with plans really quickly. It's just not, it's not fun times. It's not fun times for you. It's a good card though. I like it. Night Veil. Look at, oh my god, friggin' Dementor. Creatures your opponent control get -1/-0. Get the hell out of here. I mean, oh god, what is Cumberstone? Surf, Turf, Cumberstone, all those cards. Creatures you control, -1/-0. I mean, it is Turf, Surf Turf. So that's kind of nice. The Seraph is a card, obviously. I like him. I mean, he's a dude. I actually kind of like this guy. It's going to shut up. What's really funny about this guy is against Rakdos, obviously, because they're going to come out and be like, I get +1/+1. You'll be like, no, you don't. You can just not block. And they'll be like, I have a sad face. You'll be like, I have a winning face. I don't know. I like it. It's nice for Dimir to do something for once. I don't know. Gordoza Gorgon. Death Touch. Remove a +1/+1 counter from a creature you control. Target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn. It's a really silly card. Obviously, it's built to work with... It's not Dredge. God, we've looked at so many cards. Please forgive me. It's built to work with the mechanic here. But you can also use it with the Simic Evolve mechanic as well. Scavenge! Oh, redemption. So Gorgon's interesting card. It's just the 2 to do it, so you can kill stuff. It's not Drana. It's trying to be Drana, but it's not. But it does have Death Touch itself. It's a 2/5. Playable, maybe. Depends on your deck build. Not fantastic, though. Not anything that I'm super excited about. Incubation. Krasis Incubation is actually a really interesting card. Let's just take a second and really think about this one. Enchant creature. Enchant creature can't attack or block, and its activated abilities can't be activated. That seems pretty good, except that it's 4 mana. Keep reading a little bit. There isn't a lot of removal in white and blue, though. There's not a lot of permanent removal in white and blue. I'd like to point that out. Return Krasis Incubation to its owner's hand. Put 2 +1/+1 counters on enchanted creature. So for this to be nuts, for this to be absolutely nuts, you need 7 mana out, which is not great. Now, I mean, that's not a great moment for you. If you need 7 mana for a card to go ape shit, you're kind of in trouble. But you can spend 1 turn juicing a dude, which is kind of good. I mean, there are a lot of cards here that when they get +1/+1 counters, they trigger stuff. I mean, there are a lot of silly things that you can do with Incubation. So I actually think that it's a very interesting card. You can also just slam it on one of your opponent's creatures. You can pick it up. Yeah, they get bigger, so be mindful of that. Pick it up, you know, their second main or their end steps that you can throw it on something else if you have to. It's audible. You can call audibles with it. It's good. It's a good solid card. It's going to give +1/+1 counters to creatures that shouldn't have +1/+1 counters, so it combos off a little bit that way as well. And once you have it out, it's just a 3. I mean, it's not fantastic by any means. It is expensive. It is expensive for the things that it does. I wish it was 2 mana, return it to your hand. I kind of, that would be sick to me. Like, that would be the difference maker for this card. But even still, it's a late game mana sink for sure. Like, you can do all sorts of crazy stuff with this. So it might be one of the first cards you take out when you're boarding against some of your opponents. And it might be something that you really like to have, especially considering, I mean, this won't work at like any point ever. Like this will never be like the play, but you got to remember that unleashed creatures, when they have +1/+1 counters on them, can't block. So I just imagine someone being out there and just having the perfect storm and just being like, that guy can't block, pick it up, throw it on the other guy. Like, they have 10,000 mana at this point, obviously. Throw it on the other guy, swing in, win. It's never going to happen. Don't count on it happening. But the card's there. The interactions are there if you want to look for them. I do like this card. It's kind of cool. Lavinia of the 10th. That's a legendary creature. It's a human soldier with protection from red. She's just like, no, red, don't touch me there. When Lavinia of the 10th enters the battlefield, detain each non-land permanent your opponent's control with converted mana cost 4 or less. This is the detain fest. They're just arresting everybody. It's a police state when this thing comes down. I mean, that's good. You're going to be able to crash in, maybe win. I mean, it's 4 or less. There's a lot of 4 or less creatures in the format. Obviously, a lot of chump blockers and stuff. It's going to just be like, hey, guess what, tokens? You're not doing anything. You're not going anywhere. It's going to buy you a turn, probably. It's going to buy you a turn, maybe 2. So that's not bad. If it doesn't win you the game, it can at least buy you turns. That's pretty good. Legion's Initiative, this is just a big middle finger to board wipes, really. Not to mention the fact that it gives your creatures +1/+1. Now, this is insane. So your red and white creatures are going to get +1/+1. Your red creatures +1, obviously. I mean, it's good just on the face of it because there's a 2-drop enchantment that does that. But you can exile all the creatures you control if you exile this card as well. And at the beginning of the next combat, you return those cards to the battlefield under their owner's control, and they gain haste until end of turn. Like, this is just amazing. Like, whenever your opponent is like board wipe, you're just like, boom, pick them up. So this makes things really annoying. There's just a lot of things that this just gets around, makes people really sad. Fantastic card. Obviously, it's going to see standard play or standard sideboard play at the very least. Master Cruelties is one of the creatures that we want to worry about as far as getting in. This guy has First Strike and the D-Touch, and if he isn't blocked, he can only attack by himself. He can't bring any friends. But if he isn't blocked, he's going to take you to 1, I believe. Master is assigned no combat damage this turn, though. So he doesn't one-hit kill, which is important. Like, that last sentence is really important. You're going to be at 1, but you're pretty screwed. You are pretty screwed. There are a lot of ways. The fact that this guy has First Strike and Death Touch is really what I love about him. It's one of my favorite interactions because no matter how big your creature is, no matter how powerful your creature is, it just dies. So really, I like this guy in Rakdos just as a blocker, to be honest with you, since you're like, pretty much you're the full-on crush guy. So your opponent will already probably be pretty low on life. You don't really have to worry about that. This guy can come out and just stop your opponent from attacking long enough for you to grip up a couple more cards, really get your finishing strike settled up. You know, maybe you're searching for that 1-drop that gives all your creatures +1 in First Strike. Because this guy's just going to kill everything that comes in against it, no matter what it says over there, as long as it doesn't say First Strike and Death Touch. So it's a good card. I think it's going to help Rakdos stabilize in the mid-range to long game, and I think that's really where this card is kind of a hidden gem, kind of shining. But its ability is also useful. I just don't see it. People are going to block this. You know what I mean? People are going to block the shit out of this guy, and he can only attack by himself. So I don't see that particular ability being as useful, to be honest, as the First Strike Death Touch that he has otherwise. He is expensive, though, so I do see him being used late game, if at all, on that front. Mauve, this art is disturbing. It's disturbing, but it's awesome. I do like it quite a bit. Sacrifice a creature. Creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. That's pretty sweet. It's a 5-drop 3/3. Like I said, there's not a lot of removal for any of these cards, any of these creatures that have sick abilities. There's not a lot of removal for them in the format, in the limited format. You can sacrifice a dude. You can sacrifice him. Everybody gets +1/+1. So you can use this. I mean, it telegraphs its punches a little bit, but what's your opponent going to do about it? Because if they target it to get rid of it, you just sack him in response. You're just like, boom, because it doesn't say sacrifice another creature. So you're just like, sacrifice Maw in response to you targeting him, and they're like, sad face. That's what I didn't want. Also, I mean, you can't really sack Outlet by any means, but you can give creatures multiple +1/+1, so if you sacrifice a couple different creatures. So that's kind of nice. I do kind of like that card. Melik Izzet Paragon. Play with the top card of your library revealed. You may cast the top card of your library if it's an instant or sorcery card. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell from your library, copy it. You may choose new targets for the copy. This guy's 6 mana, but he is really good. He is really good. It depends on how many instants or sorceries you have. Obviously, a lot of the cards that are in Izzet depend completely on how many instant or sorcery spells you have. So they're not like singularly fantastic, but the fact that this guy is he's very interesting. It depends on your play. He's a 2/4, so he can get a couple of blocks in as well. He's good. I mean, he's good in your Izzet pile. That's how I think you want to run Izzet. I didn't have much luck when I ran Izzet myself. I think as far as my play group, my shop was concerned, Izzet was kind of fell flat. But I think this is what Izzet's trying to do. I think this is a great step in the right direction for them. Depends on how you want to build your deck. If you have cards like this in there, you obviously don't want to prescribe to the 16/8/16 Paragon that I have. You want to do this Paragon. Drop him. Do all sorts of crazy things. Oh, Mirko Vask, a Mind Drinker. This guy has flying. Whenever Mind Drinker deals combat damage to a player, that player reveals cards from the top of his or her library until he or she reveals 4 land cards, then puts those cards into his or her graveyard. That's pretty good, except he's a 5-drop, so I feel like he's going to get blocked a lot. He doesn't have any other tricks other than flying, and he's blue, so that one green thing that flashes in can just block him all day. I just don't see him getting in regularly. I mean, there's no reason not to block this guy, really. Morgue Burst. Return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Morgue Burst deals damage to target creature or player equal to the power of the creature returned this way. It costs a lot. It costs a lot. But this is kind of a kill spell. It can kind of be a kill spell for you. There aren't a lot of them. There's not like Rakdos Return or anything for you to sink a bunch of mana into late game to just get your late game win. So I do think that this card has a place. I think this card's pretty useful depending on how you're running. You generally want to be a little bit faster with Rakdos. You want to just get in there and be like bash, bash, bash. So I'm not sure that this guy really has a place at the table, but it can be your kill spell here. So it's okay. I mean, it can get in there with some of your bigger dudes. You can get in, bash them, return something to your hand, go ahead and get the kill. It's always second main. I mean, that's always second main, obviously, after you crash in. If it was sorcery speed, if it was instant speed instead of sorcery speed, it'd be a lot better. But as it stands, I think that this does have a place in some decks, depending on what your build is like, so that you just have that late game kill spell. Definitely don't want to have this early, though. You don't want too many late drops if you're doing the Rakdos deck. Nivix Cyclops. Big Daddy here has Defender. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, he's going to get +3/+0 until end of turn. Can attack this turn, and can attack this turn as if it didn't have Defender. He's a 1/4 for 3, which is okay. You can crash in for like 4/4 sometimes. You might be able to get in for even more damage depending on how you're playing it. So this guy is interesting. I don't particularly love him because he says Defender on him 90% of the time. And like I said, I don't have a lot of creatures if I'm running the Izzet build in a sorcery heavy way. So is this really a creature I want to drop? The answer could be yes. I mean, he's a 1/4, so he is able to block, and he is also able to attack in with a little bit of regularity if you are running the deck that way, with, you know, the heavy sorcery and instant type thing. So it's really a personal preference thing. It's a personal build thing. Like I said, I mean, the Izzet cards are just not something that I'm super familiar with So I'm not sure that I love that guy, but he does have a place in certain builds, definitely. If an opponent would draw a card except the first one he or she draws in each of his or her draw steps, instead that player skips that draw and you draw a card. So really they have to be silly enough to be playing, cards that allow them to draw. This guy does have flash, but once he gets in there, that's going to be the only time that he really goes off. Other than that, it's not really going to be too useful. It's sweet because you get to take the card advantage away from them in so much that you stop their draw step and you get the card, so it's like doubly flipping the card advantage, but I still don't think he's super useful. Obsidat's Aid. Return target permanent card from your graveyard to the battlefield. I love returning stuff to the battlefield. It costs 5, but I don't really care because it's any permanent. You can just wreck people with this card. It's a great late drop. It's going to completely refresh your game. I mean, it really depends on what you're dropping, but 5 mana to return any permanent is pretty good. It's only your graveyards. That is important to realize. Oh, but it's still pretty powerful. I do like it. It depends on what you have. If you don't have anything that's like super bomb heavy in your deck, you obviously don't want to run this. Like if you have a bunch of little dudes, you don't want to spend 5 mana to just get another little dude out there. But you can just like reawaken something that you had. Just be like, hey, here's this threat that you just managed to deal with. Because like I said, there's not a whole lot of removal, so bringing back a huge threat would be pretty bad for your opponent. Pilfered Plans. Target player puts the top 2 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. Draw 2 cards. I like this one because you get to draw 2 cards. It does a little bit of stuff. I mean, obviously it's only going to mill them 2, but 3 mana, draw 2 cards has always been pretty good, and they threw a little bit of extra sauce into it. So if you're the Dimir guy, I think you're playing that card when you get it. At least 1 copy. Plasm Capture. Now this is as close to removal as you're going to get in a lot of instances. You counter target spell at the beginning of your next pre-combat main phase. You add X mana in any combination of colors to your mana pool, where X is the spell's converted mana cost. I actually really like this card, to be honest with you. I think in Simic, you play it, definitely. It's going to get down there and just completely stop whatever threat your opponent was trying to play. And then on your next turn, you get to play something equally threatening or even cooler of your own. So I do like that card quite a bit. It's only a 4-drop, so I like that. You may have Progenitor Mimic enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except it gains at the beginning of your upkeep. If this creature isn't a token, put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of this creature. It's written that way so that you can't just be like, I have 9 tokens now. Now I have 18 tokens. My life is amazing. So this guy's gonna just, hey, he's daddy. He's just daddy. He's just asexually reproducing cards all over the place. He's a 6-drop, obviously, but I really think that he's going to be a problem for your opponents to deal with because they only really have the 1 turn, and then he multiplies, makes things even worse for them. I do like that guy. I think he's pretty good. Putrefy. Destroy target artifact or creature. Can't be regenerated. This is amazing. It's instant speed. It's 3 mana. This is exactly what you want to have as your removal. This is really, really solid, really, really great removal, to be honest with you, because it just destroys it, no questions asked. Regeneration doesn't even happen. It's an uncommon, so I think we're going to be seeing a lot of that this weekend. Rouse, oh, you freaking coin flipping bastard. Tap a target permanent, then untap another target permanent for +1. For Neg 2, Ralzeric deals 3 damage to target creature or player. Zap. Neg 7. This sumbitch, if you neg 7, you're going to flip 5 coins. And you're going to take an extra turn after this one for each coin that comes up heads. This dude is a 4-drop. If I see him, I am just sad. Like, I've got to spend a lot of time trying to kill him. Not to mention the fact that he's tapping and untapping permanents. Like, I don't even know what to say to that. Like, he's actively trying to stop me from being useful on my opponent's turn. Meanwhile, he's untapping dudes, so if you use it second main, you can untap a dude that attacked. First main, you can tap down a dude and get in there for more damage. But second main, really, you can just untap defenders for Ral himself, so they can block and be like, no, you're not slapping my boss. So I think this guy obviously is good. I don't really have to talk about how amazing he is. He's the only Planeswalker in the pack. So I think we just need to move on from that guy. I hope we don't see him too much played against us. Target opponent reveals his or her hand for Reap Intellect. You choose up to X non-land cards from it and exile them. For each card exiled this way, search that player's graveyard, hand, and library for any number of cards with the same name as that card and exile them. then that player shuffles his or her library. Um, Pretty good. I mean, it's a 4-drop on its own. You want to drop it probably for 6 or something. You don't really know what your opponent has, so I'd say that this is sideboard at best. If you're lucky enough to be playing against an opponent that has like a billion of one particular card, this will be really good, but they have to have one in their hand as well. So it's not great. I'm going to go ahead and say that this is sideboard at absolute best. Worst case scenario, you just don't want to see it at all when you're opening packs. I don't think I'm going to be super psyched if I see this card. I don't even think I'm going to be moderately excited. Render silent, counter target spells. Controller can't cast spells this turn. That's pretty good and limited. It's going to be a little bit tricky for your opponent. It's not super useful early game because they really don't have the mana to cast more than one spell. I mean, it's not super super useful mid-range because they're probably tapping down to cast their bombs, but it is a counter spell for 3. And that's the thing that I think a lot of people are discounting. Its second ability might not be fantastic, but its first ability says counter target spell. It's 3 mana. That's really good in my eyes. Restore the peace! Return each creature that dealt damage this turn to its owner's hand. This is garbage. They already punched me in the face. And then it's just return to hand. It's not even destroy. Like, that's a complete garbage card. I don't want it anywhere near me. Rotform Skeleton. Rotform Skeleton can't block. He's 4/1 though, so why would you want him to? If you pay 4, you can put the top 4 cards of your library into your graveyard and return Rotform Skeleton from your graveyard to the battlefield, not to your hand. You can only play that anytime you cast a sorcery, and that's what makes it so weak. If it was instant speed, if I could do it at their end step and then just be like, boom, he's coming in, it'd be way better. Obviously, as it stands, since he can't block, I'm really just tying up my mana for no reason on that one. Rurik Thar, the Unbound. This guy is bowing people in front of him, if you know what I'm saying. He's got Vigilance and Reach. Rurik Thar, the Unbound, attacks each turn of Fable, so he's crack-a-lacking. He's coming in, don't worry. Whenever a player casts a non-creature spell, Rurik Thar deals 6 damage to that player. So really the only way to take care of this guy is when they play him. He doesn't have haste. So you gotta wait the turn, don't cast anything, and then go down in front with all your creatures, pretty much, to block up to the 6 defense. And even then you're not safe because you're playing the dude with Blood Rush. So they can just Blood Rush this guy, make his ass a little bit fatter, he just wipes your side. Meanwhile, you can't cast spells. 6 damage is gigantic. This guy, obviously insane. Everybody was talking about him when he was revealed. He's still good. I mean, I don't even know what to say about that guy. He's just crazy. Savage-born Hydra. This guy's got double strike. He enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. For 2 mana, you can put a +1/+1 counter on Savage-born Hydra. Activate this ability only anytime you can cast a sorcery. I see this guy getting killed pretty quickly. But since there's so little removal in the format, I think this is a very formidable creature, especially if you find a way to give him trample in any fashion. But double strike, fantastic on its own. You can only pump him at sorcery speed, which is a little lame, but really with the double strike, I mean, you definitely don't want to pour a ton of mana into him, but he is a late game mana sink. If you draw him early game, you can put him down there because he's a first striker that you can pump on your second main phase. So he's a tricky dude. I actually really like that card. Scab Clan Giant enters the battlefield. It fights target creature an opponent controls chosen at random. I don't like choosing things at random. I don't like that this guy's a 6-drop. I don't like the fact he's a 4/5. I don't like anything about him. Get out of here, Giant Warrior. I just don't think he's fantastic because it's the random thing, really. I mean, he could just kill himself. 6 damage to kill itself is not great in my eyes. Or 6 mana to kill itself. Showstopper. Until end of turn, creatures you control gain. When this creature dies, it deals 2 damage to target creature an opponent controls. This is just crazy. I mean, it's basically a board wipe. You can be all sorts of tricksy with this. You can really take care of your opponent. Because you attack in, you do all your crazy stuff, you damage all your opponents, or you know, damage is about to be assigned, you cast this thing, so you're doing all that damage that you originally would have done, and then what? You're taking creatures to 1, you're taking creatures to 2, you might be taking creatures to 3, but then all your creatures that died you just double down on. This is also really great when you're blocking, so it's interesting. It's going to be really interesting to see this card played, to see if it can be played effectively by people. But like I was saying, I mean, blocking is pretty sick. This is really just a board wipe for you. Not great in Rakdos. I might add the board wipes aren't really fantastic in Rakdos, but as long as you have this card, hopefully you're gripping up a couple guys, maybe some hasters, so that when you untap, if you did it blocking, you can just go in and finish your opponent. So really, I think this is to be used on your opponent's turn for maximum value. Sin Collector enters the battlefield. Target opponent reveals his or her hand. You choose an instant or sorcery card from it and exile that card. 3 mana, 2/1. With a little bit of sauce on it. It's a good effect. I like this guy. I think he's pretty good for 3. He's going to be a 2/1, uncommon slot. Very playable. Sire of Insanity. At the beginning of each instep, each player discards his or her hand. I hate that. I don't want to. I mean, I know I should have board position at this point, but I don't like just completely destroying my options. Because if I don't have... They can top deck something that wrecks me. And if they top deck something that wrecks me, and I'm the Rakdos guy, then I mean, it's okay, because we equally have a chance of top decking something that's good. I understand that. I have more of a chance of top decking something with haste, so I can get in there. So really, I'm supposed to look at this as being a complete disruption of my opponent's plan. Still in that vein, if I'm the Rakdos guy, I shouldn't have any cards in my hand when I reach land drop 6, to be honest with you. So I can see both sides of the argument for this guy. On the one hand, you shouldn't have any cards. So when you play this guy, he should obliterate your opponent's options. I see that. But on the other hand, I don't like when it's just top deck wars, because maybe it's because I'm not a greatly or vastly lucky individual, so I definitely do not like top deck wars. But I can see the value of this guy. If I'm playing Rakdos, if I get him, I think he would make it in the deck, to be honest with you. He is a 6/4 as well, and it stops your opponents from being able to mount any sort of plausible defense against you. Species Gorger. At the beginning of your upkeep, return a creature you control to its owner's hand. I mean, it's a 5-drop 6/6, which is great. It's going to allow you to bounce something to your hand that you can lay again to hopefully evolve your other creatures. That's obviously what this guy was put together for. He's a frog beast too, so he's worth playing just off that. But a 5-mana 6/6 is useful no matter what, especially if he's supposed to evolve your other creatures. The one thing to remember is that if this is the only guy that you have out, his name is Sir Blocks-a-Lot. Because all he is useful for is blocking your opponent and then bouncing back to your hand where you get to cast him again for 5. So he's completely useless if he's the only card you have out. So I definitely don't want to see too many of this guy, that is for sure. Spike Jester. This guy's got haste. He's a 3/1. Amazing. Awesome. Every day I'm going to run this in a Rakdos deck. Every day. That's sick. 3/1 haste. Love it. Tragic Blade of the Legion. Battalion. Whenever he attacks, he gets +5/+5. Oh, did I mention he's indestructible? Yeah, he's pretty damn good because he's going to allow you to trigger that Battalion no matter what's going on. I mean, you're just triggering Battalion like a fiend when this guy's out. So he's pretty enjoyable. I imagine quite a few people are going to be happy to see him. Tessa, Envoy of Ghosts. Vigilance, protection from creatures. She costs a little much for this. She costs 7, but whenever a creature deals combat damage to you, destroy that creature, put a 1/1 white and black spirit creature token with flying onto the battlefield. I mean, she's not Dread Mangler. She's just that's not what it is. Oh god, what am I thinking of? I can see it. I don't think that's what it is. It's an old school card for 6 mana, I believe, that comes down and just destroys creatures that deal damage to you. Ugh, light up the comments. Oh, I know exactly what it is and don't have to look it up at all. That is for you guys to hit up the comments for. That's your comment question of the day. She's just not as good at that. Not to mention the fact that dude had fear and was like a 6-something. 6/6 maybe. Bottom line, I just think she costs too much because they're going to deal the damage to me anyway, so I'm dead at that point. You know what I mean? Like, I'll put that down. She'll be able to block, but in order for her to destroy other creatures, they have to have already hit me in the nug, so I don't like that. Tithe Drinker's got Lifelink and Extorts, 2-drop. I like that. I love having a couple of 2-drop Extorters, especially if they have Lifelink. She's not too big, so she's not like perfect, but she's pretty good. Tristani's Summoner costs a lot, but I get a bunch of dudes. But personally, I'm never going to run this. It's just a 1/1 for 7. I get a 4/4, a 3/3, and a 2/2. But it's just, it's too little too late in my eyes. I don't think it's going to be enough. It's a lot like that one that dropped 2 trample dudes. Like when you dropped it, you were really happy, but it was too expensive to really be useful. Unflinching Courage, Armadillo Cloak is always good. I love Armadillo Cloak. +2/+2, trample, lifelink, enchantment. Like I said, there's not a whole lot of removal. There's not a whole lot of removal for enchantments either. So this is a solid card. At the very least, you're going to get in once with it, probably, especially at a 3-drop. The Scar Striped. This is a legendary creature. Each creature card in your graveyard has Scavenge. The Scavenge cost is equal to its mana cost. Sacrifice another creature, generate this guy. Obviously really good, especially because he's a 3-drop. Like, the fact that he's a 3-drop just makes this guy insane. I really do like this guy. I think he's going to be pretty good in any deck that you're putting together. That's, even in Gruul decks. Like, that's the thing, though. Like, even in a Gruul deck, this guy's great because you Blood Rush, and then you can scavenge it as well on, like, your second main. You can Blood Rush it during your attack step, and then scavenge it on your second main. It's just, he's good. He's a good dude, and he's going to be hard to get rid of because you can sacrifice another creature to regenerate him. Viashino First Blade has haste. When he enters the battlefield, he gets +2/+2 until end of turn. I don't like this guy. I know he's a 4/4 for 3, and then he's a 2/2. I just don't like that momentary stuff. He can't target somebody else. He doesn't have flash, so he's just not really that great in my eyes. Vorel of the Whole Clan. For each counter on target artifact, creature, or land, put another of those counters on that permanent for 2. Obviously also sick because he's a 3-drop, not to mention the fact that he's going to evolve your other creatures because he's a 4 in the ass. There's really not much in the format that you're going to drop at 1 and 2 that's not going to evolve when a 4 in the ass comes out. So very useful. His ability, obviously very useful as well. War Leader's Helix, Lightning Helix, for a little bit more, doing a little bit more. It is, in my eyes, a much worse version of Lightning Helix. It has a little bit more reach. It's going to kill your 4 in the asses, and you're going to gain 4 life, but it does cost 4 mana. Lightning Helix is just better. But as far as this format is concerned, this card is fantastic. It should be in every red-white deck that comes across it for sure. Warped Physique is pretty much removal. You're going to get +X, -X until end of turn, where X is the number of cards in your hand. It's definitely not Augur Spree. It's not really that great removal, to be honest with you. It can take care of something early game, though, for sure. Plus, hopefully, if you're the Dimir guy, you might be drawing cards. You know, you might have some stuff that you can do. So, hopefully, this is a little bit better than I'm giving it credit for. I'm just kind of worried that it's terrible. Woodlot Crawler has Forest Walk and Protection from Green for a 2-drop. That's pretty damn good. There's a lot of decks that are going to be splashing green. This is definitely a sideboard card. I'm not going to run him for any reason without sideboarding him. I don't really know why he has Forest Walk and he's pro-green when he could essentially just be pro-green. Oh my god, I'm so bad. This guy's really good because in dual color sets, they're gonna, if they just have one forest out, even if they have just a blue creature, it can't block this guy. So the Forest Walk's hugely important to this card, just vastly important. Because just to make myself clear here, if they have a monocolored creature that's not green, Forest Walk allows it to be unblockable. So obviously very good card. Sideboard material though, not main board. Zerta the Ancient. The is not in there, but I don't care. Whenever a player taps land for mana, he gets a bunch more mana. He's a 5-drop 7/5. I mean, I'm supposed to be scared to play him because it gives my opponent a bunch more mana, but I don't even really care. This guy's huge. He is massive. I'd play him if I opened him. I don't really give a shit about them getting more mana, to be honest. Oh, now we got the Druid. Add a green to your mana pool, and whenever you tap him, this guy is going to deal 1 damage to each opponent. So that's really good. Mana ramp with a little bit of damage on top is delicious as far as I'm concerned. So that's pretty good. I do like that guy quite a bit. Feral Animist. Feral Animist gets +X/+O until end of turn, where X is its power. This is a pretty good guy. I mean, if you're facing a first striker, you're not too happy with him. But you can Blood Rush on, like you can trigger this, Blood Rush it, Blood Rush will resolve, it'll up its power, then the 3 will activate. It's a lot like a Changeling, Chameleon Colossus, or whatever it was, from way back in the day, which was like 4 mana to play him, and then 4 mana you just double it where X is its power. It's basically the same thing. But yeah, you want to activate this for your 3. In response to your activation, play your Blood Rush. This guy gets super wacky huge and just gets in there for the win, hopefully. This guy just gelling like a felon. Sphinx Flying Vigilance for 5 mana. Whenever this guy attacks, other attacking creatures get +1/+1 until end of turn. So it's like Battle Cry with butt. It's like butt cry. I don't like this way that sounds. Anyway, hey, this guy's pretty good. He's got Vigis and he's a 1/5, so he's coming all the time and he's pumping the rest of my side. So I do like that. Voice of Resurgence. I like this card a lot because he just lays down on the field for 2 mana, and then every time your opponent tries to do anything, you just get another dude. Board wipes obviously are going to make you sad, very sad, but even if they just kill this guy, they cast a spell to kill it, okay? Because you're not attacking him with this dude. They cast a spell to kill it, you get a dude. It dies, you get a dude. You get 2 dudes that are big for 2 mana. Love it. Gonna play it all the time. Finally, Maze's End. It's not going to be great and limited, to be honest with you. It's just, I don't think it's going to do it in the limited format. But there you go. That's going to be your promo card as well. Whew, that was an hour of straight talking. I need to go take a water break. I hope you guys enjoyed this segment. Next, we're going to be looking at the gimmick cards. We're going to be looking at these double Toil and Trouble, which is actually kind of funny, kind of apropos. Cards in the next segment, the last segment of this. Thanks again for watching, you guys. I will see you there.